less than an hour, aircraft from here will join others from around the world. And you will be launching the largest aerial battle in the history of mankind. Why aren't I the biggest nerd? Alright, so part 2, here we go. I feel like this looks sort of like if Black Widow stole Captain America's uniform. How's it going? Oh yeah. Oh. Don't want to flash the audience. That would be bad. Yeah. Okay, so we're starting off with the MadeYewLook detail brush again and doing a basic black outline of everything that we're going to be seeing in the chest area. So the neck, the straps on the sides, and the one strap that crosses his chest. This is all from a movie poster for the Winter Soldier. Very simple black outline. And then I'm going to go in with a larger brush and white and gray and a little bit of light blue. And this is going to be the base underneath, and all the straps are going to go on top. I'm not getting very close to the edges, I'm just making sure that we have a base color that everything is going to go on top of. The straps I'm going to be using gray and a little bit of black. These are not going to have any blue in them. I'm leaving the center strap that goes across the chest blank for now because it's going to be on top of everything else, so I don't want it to mix in with anything, so it'll be by itself right now and blank. Now I'm going in with light blue, Lagoon blue, and a little bit of white. We're going to add shadowing from the side. I forgot to add the seams. So these are the seams on the chest piece where the light is going to be hitting it a little bit, and they're quite dark where the stitching is. So this is just following the lines on the poster that I see. And the star, which is on the chest. I left the star after I did the base color because it's going to just be white, and as long as there aren't too many layers of color, it's okay that it's going on top of it. Now I'm going in with the Lagoon blue a bit more and shading in where I see shadows, starting with the lighter color and working my way darker. A lot of this will be blended in with my finger or with eyeshadow afterwards. So I'm following the same light source that I had in my mask so that it matches as much as possible, and alternating between light blue and the Lagoon blue for now. It's always going to look really weird when you're first doing the layers. It just looks like a mess. But as you layer on, it'll look much better. I start with the underneath part of the chest because that way each layer from the straps to the shoulders can go on top of the next one. And that way I can make sure that my lines are really clean and that it actually looks like something is on top of another. And these seams I added white with light blue and then black. Make sure you add those highlights and the seam, and still blending. You can see what I'm doing more than I can explain it. Now I have eyeshadow. I'm using Sugar Pills Blue again. This is just really blending it in and making it as dark and menacing but also really dynamic as I can. So I started with the blue, and then I'm going to go in with some grays and black and mix them all in. Again, I'm starting from the lightest colors and working my way darker. The eyeshadow blends in really well on top of the paint and gives it a really dynamic look instead of the flatness that I was getting with the paint colors because I didn't have enough colors. You really want to do as many colors as possible and really blend from one color to the next instead of having harsh lines of just bright blue, dark blue, and whatnot. And here's the gray and a little bit of black. The gray and black I'm getting from my Morphe 35C palette. I'm outlining the straps underneath where they would be causing a shadow on the part underneath, and also in the center strap where it would be causing a shadow. I obviously want to make sure that I'm shadowing correctly, so I do follow the photo as much as possible for these shadows, which side would be lighter and which side would have the darker. And then adding a bit of highlight with the light blue on the opposite side. I took a little bit of white eyeshadow to blend in a little bit to make the highlight stand out a little bit more. It's not really necessary, but I liked how it looked. I'm just going in with a little bit of black again to really define the dark lines. I basically am finishing the underneath piece as much as possible before I move on because it's so layered. Now I'm doing these little cross-stitching pieces. I noticed in the photo that the material that's used is sort of a woven material, so there are parts where the light is hitting the seams or the weave of it. So I wanted to highlight that a little bit in certain areas, not the entire piece, but just certain areas where it would show off a little bit more or where I could see it a bit more in the photo. It adds a little bit of texture to it. And then a little bit of white on certain highlight spots I'm blending in with my finger. So now on the straps, after I did that dark line, which was the shadow and part of where the strap sort of bent in, there's a highlight spot, which is where the light is hitting the edge of the strap, and so I'm doing a line of white with a little bit of gray, but it's mostly white. This can look a little messy right now because we're going to have a line of black right next to it where we can clean it up a bit more. And this is going to be the inseam on the strap. This first strap is a little bit of gray, Lagoon blue, and a little bit of white. I'm trying to make sure that I have a little bit of blue in this because the side strap is not going to have any blue. And again, I'm just following the photo, adding a little bit of dark around the edges and a buckle or sort of, seam looking thing in the center part. I'm not going into too much detail on the actual seams of it because it all blends together anyway, so I just sort of want to follow the light and the colors and not really have every detail of the straps. So adding a bit of black, a little bit of white, a little bit of gray. Not too much blue though. It makes it much more bold when you add white lines and black lines where you see certain areas really popping instead of just like a flat gray look. And I'm shading as much as I can. Again, I'm adding those seam shading and highlights, give a little bit of texture. And then going in with the black to outline. Now I'm going in with some eyeshadow from my Morphe Brushes palette, 35C, and adding some grays and blacks to shade in the top part of the strap. And I'm doing this all in the same direction, so it looks like it's very uniform. You can see a lot of the shading more than I can explain. I added a little bit of blue on the top because that's where a highlight might be, and the highlight can be in blue. Now I'm outlining outside of the black lines with Lagoon blue and white. This is going to be a highlight from the strap. And then adding a little bit of white in the center in certain areas to highlight it. All of these little lines will really make it more dynamic and pop a bit more. The top shoulders have a sort of square-shaped pattern, so I'm going in with black to outline these details. Sometimes you have to change hands when you're too far over your shoulder. Now this looks really flat on its own, so I had to outline and then I'm going to shade from the straps to that material, and then I'm going to shade each part individually because they are very three-dimensional. And underneath the strap, it was just sort of a basic fabric. I didn't see any pattern, so I'm just shading in with blue and black. So on the top here, I'm adding in the same corner on each one because you want to keep having that same light source. I'm putting a little bit of blue, a little bit of black, a little bit of gray, mixing it together. This is very, very rough. It doesn't need to be perfect because it's so shaded, I guess. I had a little bit of white as bubs to sort of blend it in better. And then I just use my finger to blend it around. Now underneath it's going to be very dark because it's sort of underneath the strap and in your armpit, so I darkened it a lot. And you really want to blend it out as much as possible. To me, so I added a bit more shading. As you can see, the more shading you add, the more striations and lines in the fabric, the more dynamic it looks, the more edgy, more interesting, and it looks a lot less flat. Now I'm going in on the star, finally, and I'm just going in white paint and doing a basic outline of it. Okay, so my camera stopped recording because it died. So the star was just white paint all the way around, and then I did a black outline and a bit of shading underneath it, with on the blue behind it. I did some of the same scratches and cuts that I had done on the face mask, where I just took some black paint on a brush and sprayed it. I also just did some little lines and dots on my own, and then I did a basic black outline in the center of it to act like a seam because it's sewn on. And then I did the black strap that goes across the chest, just black all the way around, a little bit of shading outside of it, and then added some white striations and a little bit of white square on the top by my collarbone so that it has a little bit more of a three-dimensionality again. With the strap and the star, you don't want to shade equally around the entire thing because then it again will look flat. So I really only shaded on the underneath towards the center of the chest and the bottom, and a little bit where the strap would overlap. So that's all of it. You saw me do a little bit of the other shoulder, so you kind of get an idea of how I did both of them. And that's all. Last thing I was doing was the neck. In the first part, I did do a bit of this neck shading as well. I just wanted to show you again. It's just a cold brown color that I'm using as a shadow, which can make it look like I have some serious muscles in my neck and also more masculine neck around the throat muscles and the side neck muscles. And you blend that a lot. You don't want to see any actual lines. And then I also shaded a little bit around where the neck would reach the fabric. So that's it. I hope you like it.